Hello there, everyone. This is video 2 for your shortcuts price list that will go out on 9 p.m. at 9 p.m. this Wednesday, Sydney time, March 5th. If you would like to be on the price list, as always, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Quick plug for my record fair, 2 weeks today, March 16th. At the Hotel Staying in Manly at 11 a.m. The numbers are looking great. It's going to be fun. I'm going to do a bunch of giveaways and fun things on the day. Really looking forward to it. If you can make it, it'd be great to see you. Now, this second list today is just a generic. I just picked a bunch of things from the crates that just, I'll talk about those. And I think there's some interesting records here that I think are pretty eclectic. I'm gonna go from kind of psychedelic rock in the late 60s to some classic 80s and everything in between. But there really was only one place to start today. So this week, one of my favorite singers passed away. Roberta Flack was a classically trained pianist who as you'll see, there's some images of that, from North Carolina, an incredibly beautiful woman. Oh my God, just gloriously attractive. And she emerged in the late 60s through the jazz scene, particularly through someone who many of you who've been following Shortcuts for a while will know, who's somewhat of a Shortcuts kind of cult favorite, and that's Les McCann. He discovered her singing in a nightclub in Washington, D.C., and introduced her to Atlantic Records, and there began something pretty special. Her career really skyrocketed on Atlantic, and we're going to talk about that in a second. You've got this intense mix of jazz, soul, folk, and this just outrageously beautiful voice. And straight off the bat, she made a masterpiece. First Take by Roberta Flack. There she is playing the piano. And on the back are listening notes. By Les McCann. Sorry, not listening notes, but sleeve notes by Les McCann. Roberta who? Never heard of her. Oh yeah, Roberta Flack. That's the singer you keep telling me about. That's the kind of dialogue that went on for years between Tony Taylor and myself. He tells the story of hearing her for the first time in this club in 1968. When she sang a love song, I was in love. We all were in love. We all were singing our love. She alone had the voice. Roberta possesses, both as a singer and pianist, that rare quality that carries the listener beyond every barrier as though it never existed, to that level to which all humans can truly hear. This record kicks off with one of my favorite songs, Compared to What, by Gene McDaniels, who in the 60s was Eugene McDaniels, and he was kind of like a pop singer. But then he became quite activist and made a series of amazing records, including Outlaw in the 70s. But she covered one of his songs, Compared to What. And I think it's kind of prescient that her first track on her first record was a cover, because she was amazing at covering songs. The first track on side 2, I think, is even better. Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye by Leonard Cohen. What I think the definitive version of that song. And then after that, Ewan McCall's The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. This was where Clint Eastwood enters the fray. My dad was a huge Clint Eastwood fan. I remember watching Clint Eastwood movies before watching really any other movie. He would go and get Clint Eastwood VHSs, and we watched everything from, you know, the silly orangutan movies in the 80s all the way through. I remember my dad showing me, Dirty Harry movies when he really shouldn't have been. It was amazing. But he took The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face and played it in his movie Play Misty for Me, which just happens to be one of his best. And I think from there, everything changed, even though the album itself is sparse. I mean, there's only a few musicians. Remarkably, this album was recorded in 10 hours. Honestly, it's just mind-boggling. It got a re-release off the back of Play Misty for Me. All of a sudden, it's number one, wins Grammy for Record of the Year, and so it begins. If you want to pick another record of hers up, Quiet Fire is pretty incredible. Her 80s output has some nice records too, and I quite like this one. So this is I'm the One, which was, I think, 81 or 82. Again, still on Atlantic. But this is where this kind of sleeve's one of these ones that kind of folds over on itself. But this is, where you really start to understand how people kind of corralled around her. She'd had another hit, Making Love, which is really, really good, that's on this record. And so you got Steve Gadd, Eric Gale, Grover Washington, Eddie Harris, and others who help out on this. Kind of more, I guess, AOL listening, but still, it's Roberta Flack. Her voice is great. I didn't realize I had 2 copies of that until today, and so I thought I'd put them back up. But First Take is really special. If you don't have First Take, then please give it a listen. And I'm the One. If you're a Roberta Flack fan, you're going to love it. The next singer here, I adore everything this person did on the High label of the High Records label in the 70s with Willie Mitchell. This I bought recently, and then I realized I had a copy already, and so good luck. That means someone else is going to get the benefit. Now, this is the Vinyl Me Please repress of Al Green Gets Next to You. Now, Al Green Gets Next to You, 1971, so pretty early on in his little tour of duty with High Records. You can see this is the Vinyl Me Please exclusive pressing, and it's number 1275. So what Vinyl Me Please did with this record was they pressed it in this beautiful green kind of speckle to match the green on the record, which is always very thoughtful. They did really cool things along those lines. What's probably most important, this thing sounds spectacular. I Can't Get Next to You. Are You Lonely for Me, Baby? Tired of Being Alone. Tired of Being Alone has to be one of the most subtle, one of the most malleable and manipulative songs in terms of just making you feel good. Everything about it is so underplayed. The vocal, the drums, yet it amplifies and becomes just a special thing. I love this record. I'm really glad that I found out I've got a spare. It's superb. It sounds great. I don't know. I mean, that run of Al Green's soul records with High, Let's Stay Together, Call Me, Gets Next to You. It's just kind of legendary. It's just great. Make sure and give it a listen. The sleeve's great. Everything's about it. Buy Me Please just absolutely nailed that. All right. I've got a record now which is really hard to find on Japanese vinyl and is therefore a little bit more expensive. And so the question is it worth it? Well, I think it is. I've heard some criticism of it recently, but I listen to it and I enjoy it very, very much. It is So by Peter Gabriel. Red Rain, Sledgehammer, Don't Give Up, That Voice Again, In Your Eyes, Mercy Seat, Big Time, We Do What We're Told. Eight songs that kind of encapsulate so much of what was great about that period of 80s music. The Japanese press far exceeds the quality of the Aussie press I had before. And I think it's just maybe the the instrumentation in this record is so subtle and so beautiful that having that better soundstage just makes a difference. Of course, his vocals are very powerful and very front and center, and kind of therefore very 80s. You almost could argue that if the vocals were just set back a little bit, it would work better and wouldn't be as kind of strident as it is. There are some tracks where that does happen though, and the highlight of the record, and in my opinion, the highlight of Peter Gabriel's career is the duet with Kate Bush, Don't Give Up. I think it's the most beautiful duet maybe ever made. The fact that there's this counter melody, the only one I think that competes is Fairy Tale of New York with Kirsty MacColl and Steve and Shane MacGowan. But this one aspires for a hope and an elevation of the human spirit that I think is really important right now. When you watch what goes on in the Oval Office of the President of the free world, supposedly, then, finding your hope and your love in other places is what we have to do. I wonder what you two make of America right now. This was, alongside Joshua Tree, their love letter to you two, or love letter to America. When you get songs like Angel of Harlem, When Love Comes Back to Town with B.B. King, covering Bob Dylan, the greatest American songwriter. Politics and the US pervades this record. It has All I Want Is You, which is my personal favourite U2 song. And the good thing is, this is the Aussie pressing, and it sounds really good. I have the UK first press. I can't hear much of a difference, to be honest. I think with this one, they just nailed it. It sounds wonderful. It's a really cool album. One of the best they did, even though the film itself is a bit worthy. Always very popular, and it's really good, which always helps. Now, I've got a run of kind of records that I actually don't know that much about because they're not bands that I really know. For example, this is Foreigner's debut album. I know Cold as Ice, and Feels Like the First Time. And I do like the sleeve very much. But, Lou Gramm, Mick Jones, Ian MacDonald, Al Greenwood. I don't really know them. But this record sold in astronomical quantities. I think it was their debut as well. I don't know. If anyone wants to tell me more about this record, I'm happy to chime in. But it's a really nice copy, and it's in my crates, and so there it is. Now, I know this record much better. This is Here Comes the Sun, a series of interpretations by Nina Simone, who's probably up there with Roberta Flack in terms of cover versions. This isn't her best album. It was one of her most popular, though, and if you don't have it, it's really enjoyable. Here Comes the Sun, Just Like a Woman, Mr. Bojangles, My Way, just super popular, particularly in Australia. It went off, and this is a pretty nice copy. It's hard to find nice Australian copies of that record because it was mostly trashed. It was really well received critically at the time, and kind of it's quite emotional and resonant. She's such a legend. She's just amazing at this stuff. So she just makes it work. Her one take, I think she insisted on one takes of a lot of that record too. Particularly, I know it's true of "Here Comes the Sun," which I was playing with my son Finbar just earlier. Not the Nina version, the Beatles version. He loves that song. All right. Well, let's look at one of the most provocative and interesting bands ever to come out of the UK. Stranglers, very popular here on Shortcuts Land. This is La Folie that features that little known tune, Golden Brown, which pops up, third track of side 2, and sits in there nestling in between some of the darkest music. So I always kind of get tickled by this record. It fooled people. Come and buy that. It's beautiful. Well, you know what? You don't be the Stranglers and be a caustic kind of post-punk, slap in the face to Britain and not have a little kind of trickery in there. They were a smart bunch. They knew what they were doing, and it's a fun record. It's not a series of Golden Browns. It's something better than that. La Folie by the Stranglers. The harpsichord, of course. I just made a few notes earlier. I don't think is there a more famous harpsichord song? I don't know. Maybe In My Life by the Beatles, but I don't know. You might have heard of this. I got a really nice copy of Bat Out of Hell, Shortcuts royalty, the Japanese first press of Kate Bush's debut album. You heard me talk about Don't Give Up just a few minutes ago. This is just such an alluring sleeve and a beautiful record. I love every song. This is Shortcuts royalty for a reason. For those of you who don't know, Shortcuts royalty is bestowed on a record that more than 50 of you have bought, and that is the case with that record. This next record, none of you have bought because I only discovered it recently, and it's part of my kind of city pop little journey. This is an album called After Five Clash by Toshiki Korematsu. It's very rare and very expensive. And a lot of these city pop records from the 80s are just because of the marrying of stunning vinyl and amazing production. Except it's 80s production, so that always is kind of sitting there. But a lot of city pop is more funky, kind of jazzy keyboard textures, smooth synths, very sophisticated melodies. These albums are desirable for a reason. If you like that kind of sophisticated pop sound, it's not a million miles away from a Peter Gabriel or from some of those types. These things are well worth investigating. These records only go up in value as well. They're so incredibly popular. This is the Japanese first press. The original, as I said here, I have this little app that talks about collector's insights. The original vinyl pressing of After Five Clash has become highly collectible, especially in Japan, where it was released in both a standard and limited edition gatefold cover. And most of the time, they were never, ever released again. And so, really, really cool, interesting. If you love power pop, this is something I thought I'd call out. Red Kross, this is their album, Third Eye, from, let me get the year right, 1990. I know there are a few of you out there who love power pop just like me, and Red Kross make great power pop. For those of you who aren't aware, power pop is a little bit more of a harder hitting song, not necessarily rock, not necessarily kind of Beatles, something more crunchy, inspired by Big Star and Badfinger and bands like The Shoes, and it's some of my favorites. So while it's never commercially, you know, worth much, Red Kross are really fun and really cool. I'm just going to throw this one up there because I know there are some new jazz fans who've joined the list. This is the Vinyl Me Please pressing of The Shape of Jazz to Come, 1959, Ornette Coleman. AAA, lacquers cut from the original mono tapes by Ryan Smith. It's sterling sound, and it comes with listening notes, still sealed. So for those jazz heads out there, this is a genuine classic. It challenged the conventions of the time. It pushed jazz on. It made Ornette Coleman somewhat of a shamanic figure. It's a complete influence on most noise rock, most avant-garde rock. It is well worth your time. It is an album you have to live with for a while, though. It is improvisational. It does have its moments. But, you know, The Shape of Jazz to Come, it was, which is pretty incredible. Now, I pulled out a couple of just... I like prog and psych, etc., and not many people do. So these records sit in the crates for quite a long time, but they're really good. Like 1975, Time and Tide by Greenslade. Just, you know, kind of a rock band, kind of similar to Colosseum, more symphonic, layered, highly melodic. Wasn't very commercial at the time, but yeah, really good. I've always been a fan. But this next one is one that I'm going to call out. It's been in the crates for a while. I've had a copy for quite some time. I really like it. It's a German first press, pretty sure it's German, of The Other Half of Underground by the band The Other Half, who were a psychedelic rock band out of Los Angeles, California. They were more of a... They weren't proggy so much as garagey with a bit of psych, and so they're very punky sounding. You know, you hear a little bit of the Stooges, but you also get a little bit more of the noodly kind of bits and pieces, and it just works. It's a cult classic for a reason. Bunch of people love the raw production. Turn it up and you think to yourself, what were these guys on? It's got a really weird cover. She's Not There is probably the best song. Just kind of garage rock with psychedelic twirls and swirls. There's many people where that record's their prized possession. So give it a listen and see what you make of it. If you go on Spotify and just type in The Other Half, they have an album called The Other Half, which is actually this. So you can give it a listen. The Other Half are they're a cult, they're overlooked, but I've always been a fan. All right, as I said, an eclectic, weird, and wonderful list. If you liked it, give me a comment or a like or follow me or all that kind of business. If you would like to be on the price list for this bundle of records, drop me an email, shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. The price list will go out 9 p.m. on Wednesday evening, Sydney time. Thank you. Bye.